from everything from the continuation and, in my opinion, improvement of the aesthetics and the world building, from the satisfying planting and payoff of the enemies to lovers tropes that are set up, and the character beats that deliver on it, from the subplots that supplement the main plot and also reinforce the world building and the chemistry. Season 2 is the most solid. Season 3. We ought to talk about season 3 because, in my opinion, season 3 could have derailed all of Bridgerton. Season 3 was bad, and I don't know if enough time has passed that we're allowed to say that or not, but I'm gonna say it. And I have to say, although we've only had half of the season, Bridgerton Part 1, it's cooking with the original recipe again. The aesthetics are rebalanced. We're back to actual Regency silhouettes and styling. We've lost a lot of the volume and the weirdness and the fluffiness, literally, that we saw in season 3. Yurin-ha, the main actress who plays Sophie, Benedict's love interest, is radiantly beautiful. And there is a return to a simpler, cleaner aesthetic overall to the show, which to me much better matches the Regency setting that the show comes from, but still draws from the wider world building in an intelligent way. The best example of this is Lady Penwood and her daughter's costuming, which draws so explicitly from Asian influences across the board, and it's just so smartly done. Lady Penwood has these gloriously evil, high-standing Mandarin-inspired collars, or these pagoda-style shoulder embellishments, or these butterfly sleeves. Even her hairstyles seem very, and I don't know if this is because I've been watching too many, Chinese dramas, but seem very traditionally Chinese-inspired in ways that I've seen in C-dramas. She wears a lot of pearls in her jewelry as opposed to the rest of the ton, which is a lot more sparkly and colorful. Like, the Asian influence that they bring in to the character design and the costuming for the Penwood household is so smart. And it's not just Lady Penwood. I think Rosamond, one of the evil stepsisters, because this is a Cinderella trope story, has a bodice that is very, very structural and seems to me at least to be origami inspired, Like, it's just such a smart way, again, to take the idea of a much bigger and broader, imperial worldview that's come home to London, and to do what they did in season 2, which was to take cultural influences for the ethnicities of the characters and build them into the character and the costuming and the styling design. It's so smart. I also think, personally, that the reference to Lady Penwood having as many shoes as she does is such an Imelda reference that I just cackled when I saw it. I thought it was so smart and so funny. And again, it's a really fun, clever way to give nods to the modern while still theoretically grounding it in this historical fantasy alternative timeline. The main plot, as I've said, is a Cinderella story. So a woman denied a birthright set of privileges and reduced to being working class. And I actually really like that in the context of this story because, again, plots and subplots that supplement the wider world building are good. Class awareness has always been built into the Bridgerton world, like in really, really funny and interesting ways. In season 1, for instance, there is a hilarious scene where we first meet Anthony, where he's literally banging his mistress against the tree while a coachman is tastefully holding the horses and looking away. Like, servants are everywhere in this world, and they just have to go about their business as if their employers aren't crashing out and having, 12 different kinds of crises around them. This episode, or this season, brings the downstairs, if you will, to the fore through the character of Sophie and her associates. They do this in smart ways. The costume designs of the staff are really, really smart. They feel a little bit more Victorian to me than Regency in terms of you know, the fabrics or the buttons or, you know, not the silhouette so much, but as the costumes are fitted. But I think that actually serves us, the audience, really well, because the audience is probably a lot more familiar with the upstairs, downstairs dynamics that came out of the Victorian era or the Edwardian era, like Downton Abbey. That isn't to say that I think they depart from the Regency. I just think that as aesthetic choices, they signal to the audience the stark differences in class and station in the subtext of the show. They also, of course, bring it into the text of the show. Benedict is a gentleman. He is from the minor nobility. His brother is a lord. He himself is second in line to inherit. And in fact, Antony, who's fucked off to India with his wife for a long trip, has left Benedict in charge of the family, in charge of its finances. You know, he's getting a taste of what it would be like to be the main male Bridgerton, and he doesn't really like it and he doesn't really want it. Not least of all because he's kind of blind to his privileges. He has to be gently lectured by his housekeeper about what having Sophie stay in his house with him looks like to the rest of the world, because she's not a gentlewoman. He could negatively impact her reputation or her future job prospects. He doesn't want to marry. He doesn't feel the need to marry because he's not the main male Bridgerton, but he still feels the desire for companionship. It's not so much a subplot as it is just like a couple throwaway lines, but he sees one of his friends take a mistress because from a woman of a lower class because he couldn't marry her. She didn't have the right pedigree to be with him. But it's strongly implied that they love each other very dearly. And Benedict sees, oh, you know, that is a way to be with a woman of a different class that is acceptable in the context of this world, but still clearly involves genuine feelings and affection. The other subplots, whether it's Benedict and Sophie having to crash at his country estate while he heals from an injury, his interactions with the Crabtrees, his housekeeper and groundskeeper who maintain his country estate, the shenanigans below stairs of Sophie palling around with the other staff of Bridgerton House, even the fact that her evil stepmother, Araminta, is poaching other people's maids and staff. Like, these are subplots that once again go back to reinforcing the main plot, the main tension or the conflict between our protagonists, which is class divide, and supplementing the wider worldview of class, of wealth, of privilege, of title, and how not having it completely precludes you from this world space. So in season 3, where we had too many subplots that I thought detracted from the main storyline, season 4, part 1 at least, is making sure that all of the subplots reinforce the main storyline again. Also, I just have to say, I love himbo representation. I love it. Like, Benedict is big and handsome and dumb. And you know what? God love him. We need more big, dumb, lovely, happy boys out there. He's not tortured the way that Antony was. Colin, I literally don't care about. He's just a happy-go-lucky guy who has the luxury of not having to think about life too hard. And that's beautiful, isn't it? We need more himbos in the world, and I'm delighted to see him, you know, give us the representation we all needed. While season 4 has only been half released, and that's kind of what I'm gonna end on at the end, there's so much about it that I really, really, really like. And I think that restores Bridgerton to the secret sauce, the formula, the main components that make for fun, good, fluffy in a good way TV. I love that, you know, rakes are back. You know, Antony was a rake, and Benedict is a rake, but again, he's a himbo rake. He's not angsty, he's just having fun. I love it. I love that he's still canonically bisexual, baby. You're not gonna take that away from us. We'd love to see it. Also, safe sex representation in the Regency period. He assures his mother that he's being careful, and we, the audience, are left to infer what that could be. But you know, whether it's French letters or avoiding syphilis, good for you, King. I like that the show twists the Queen's attention from being focused on finding ladies to be the diamonds to focusing on bachelors. Again, a smart change. Like, we've established the stakes for the first 3 seasons. Let's twist it around a little bit. Very clever. Keep us interested. Sexiness is also back in a way that for me was very much missing from season 3. Excellent carriage and mirror scenes notwithstanding. Benedict is an excellent slutty wrist kisser, sir. Good for you. I actually love that we get Penelope and Colin banging in the carriage again this season. The kink has clearly been unlocked. Love that for you kids. Keep it up. I also really like that they are contrasting, you know, these healthier, fun explorations of sexuality with a subplot of Francesca, who's not quite figured everything out yet in her own marriage. Again, a subplot, but one that I think serves the main storyline really, really well. Sensuality and sex and desire and pleasure have always been interwoven in these stories, and I like that Francesca isn't experiencing something that she wants to understand better and is being proactive about seeking out that information from her married friends. That feels like something that would happen in this world. And I think that it's really cool to show Francesca being brave about it. I am also on record as loving the fact that she is the storyline that they have decided to queer, because I think it would have been easier and lazier to pick Eloise, the canonical on the shelf or attempting to be spinster sister, to turn into a token lesbian. And I'm glad that the show didn't do that. I love the fact that they picked Francesca, who I think is canonically the most beautiful of the siblings, and who is feminine, femme presenting, just traditionally femme, as being the one to have a lesbian love interest. I love the fact that they picked her storyline to queer. And I say that thinking that the Francesca Michael book is the best book in the series, and still being more than okay with the fact that they chose to turn Michael into Michaela. In fact, the only thing I have to say bad about that from a season 4 part 1 experience is whoever did the costuming for Michaela let a beautiful woman down. What is this traveling outfit? No, my girl deserved better. In the same way that I think it's really sweet to show a different kind of marriage between Francesca and John, one which is quieter, but they still are communicating with one another, and she's still, you know, getting up the nerve to ask for what she wants. I like the fact that they're giving Violet a late life romance. Yes, queen, we love to see it. I mentioned her lingerie set already. I want it. Agent Provocateur needs to get on that for all of us, because Mother Bridgerton. But also, please learn how to talk to your daughters about sex. Please, I'm begging. I love Araminta Penwood. I love her. I love her. A literal Black Widow. She's so evil and so beautiful and so sinisterly dressed, and I don't know, I think she might have killed at least one of her husbands. Obviously, I'm in love with her. I think she's a fantastic villainess. And we don't often get those in Bridgerton. We often get foils, we often get circumstances, but we've only had 2 seasons where we've had, I would say, an actual villain. Season 3, which was Cressida, which I didn't like because I thought that they were setting her up for a different storyline that could have paid off better than what they actually gave her, which was to vanish off into the wilderness, and I think that's too bad. But now we have a satisfying villainess in Araminta Penwood, and, you know, seeing her brought down in some way, I'm sure is going to be so satisfying, but oof. Give me a bad bitch any day, man. And finally, I love the subplot relationship between Lady Danbury and Queen Charlotte, because this takes me into my conclusion really, really nicely. But we see that Queen Charlotte's world is getting smaller, and time is moving on without her, and people are moving on in a way that she can't. And that is because Queen Charlotte is the best season of Bridgerton, bar none. It is the one that best combines those 4 components that I laid out at the start. It does the best combination of aesthetics and world building. It does the best placing of its main plot. It does the best inclusion and use of its subplots to further the main storyline and the wider world building. And it has some of the best chemistry of any of the leads. argue with the wall. Let's start with the world building. The Queen storyline sets out how the world of Bridgerton came to be, how racial integration happened in this fantastical alternative historical timeline. A woman of color marries into the British royal family, and change ensues as a result. I like that the show brings the fact of the change to the fore, the fact that there would be political and social upheavals that would have to take place around this, that the very face and makeup of the Ton would have to change to reflect a different British royal family. And again, because this happens in a historical timeline, it happens without violence, but not without conflict. Like, this is demonstrated to be a change for literally everyone involved, and the show makes that change part of the plot. The aesthetics of the show, the costuming is fantastic. The fact that it takes place in the 18th century, I think actually serves the show particularly well, because the 18th century was inherently more showy, was more wild and over the top than the Regency period of the main storyline. And I think, going back once again to Queen Charlotte's fantastic wigs, that serves the story really well, because it allows you to do cool things with the character design, to take modern Black hairstyling inspirations and see what it would look like in an 18th century pompadour wig. Genius. I love it. Caring for textured hair is actually built into the character and costuming design for Queen Charlotte. We see her hair being wrapped at night or having to be styled in specific ways that feel, again, historically inspired, but also modern referencing. It was so smart to do the costuming choices that they did, and I think that show pulls off this mix of historic and modern so well, not just for Queen Charlotte, but for the wider ton, for Lady Danbury, who also has these gorgeous wigs that combine pompadour 18th century shapes with Black and textured hair styling of more modern periods. It's so clever. There's even things like with Princess Augusta, King George's mother. She is shown in a very 18th century styled looking traveling garment to come see her daughter-in-law. And weirdly, it reminds me of the costumes in the TV show Outlander, when they took direct inspiration from Dior's new look from the 1950s, but applied easily identifiable and referenceable Dior designs backwards into the 18th century. I feel like they did the same thing with Princess Augusta. She has the 18th century silhouette, but there's a modernness and a crispness to how the fabrics were cut and shaped around her. Not in all of her costumes. Some look incredibly historical, but others look like that perfect blend of modern and historical that I think the Bridgerton series just hits the sweet spot for. The main trope of the main story is arranged marriage, which is common in romance, and is also historically accurate. Queen Charlotte was married to King George III through an arranged marriage, and historically, that couple had to work things out. Also historically, they seemed to genuinely love one another and ended up having 15 kids together. I'm pretty sure that George III also never kept a mistress or did any of the things that kings of his age were kind of expected to do. He had a very domestic view of family. So again, historical fact being actually brought into the narrative of this historical fantasy series. The conflict that has to be resolved in an arranged marriage trope is, how do these two people who don't know each other come to know and fall in love with each other after the fact of their marriage? And this show nails it. That's because the two leads have fantastic chemistry. George as a character is incredibly sweet and charming. Charlotte as a character is incredibly bold and brave and self-assured. They each kind of have something that the other lacks. And it's satisfying to watch them play off of one another. The spicy scenes are spicy and fun. And hey, we love to see hot people being hot together, don't we? Their, sexual and romantic development progresses alongside their emotional development, which is true in any good romance series. The subplots also further the main plot incredibly well. We have some upstairs, downstairs, where the staff or the supporting characters for the palace and the politics, have vested stakes in this marriage working out. And behind the scenes, they're trying to manipulate the royal couple into having children to secure the dynasty. Or, the people who work for George are trying to protect the fact of his madness from the outside world, which obviously leads to conflicts and tensions within the marriage or within the households. The best subplot is, of course, that of Lady Danbury. We see how she becomes Lady Danbury and how the fact of her being very quickly ennobled to hastily change the racial stakes of the society in which they live, but also then fairly quickly widowed and being unsure of her station and having to think politically and smartly to secure not just her son's inheritance, but cement the wider great experiment of racial social integration, not just for her own family, but for her community. All of that serves the main thrust of the main story, what the royal marriage means, not just for the couple, but for the country that they represent. It works. It furthers the main plot. It world builds around it very, very intelligently. And finally, the not quite subplot, but the framing device, which leaps us, the audience, forward to the main Bridgerton setting, where Queen Charlotte is older. Her children are all grown, and her one legitimate grandchild has passed away, thereby putting the work of her lifetime, which has been supporting her insane husband and having enough children to protect his dynasty and legacy, completely into question. And I love how the show, this season of the show, presents all of the characters as being deeply, deeply imperfect. Queen Charlotte is shown as being very good at the job of being queen. She is a rock and a ballast to her husband, particularly during his fits of madness. She is an anchor for the royal family. She does her job by having, dozens of children. But all of this comes at the expense of her being a good mother. She's not a good mother. She's a good queen, but she's not a good mother. And these two things are held in tension with one another very beautifully and very authentically. We don't lose any sympathy for her as our main character and our protagonist by knowing that she can be a difficult woman, a stubborn woman, that she's not very empathetic even to her own children, because the writing and the world building around her makes us understand why she is the way she is and why she behaves the way that she does. That's how you write a really good season of TV that doesn't really have a villain. There isn't a villain in Queen Charlotte. The villain is the reality of the world around them and the facts that they have to deal with. I also really like that the show, again, shows a different kind of love. Different tropes of romance, in my opinion, showcase different kinds of relationships really, really well. The kind of relationship that you get in an arranged marriage probably looks very different from the kind of marriage that you get in a friends to lovers trope. The emotional beats are different. The attractions to another partner are different. And again, if you think that romance is a good medium to explore different kinds of human connection, you have to look at, the merits of each trope on its own. I think that Queen Charlotte's story tells a very different kind of love story. It tells the story of what it takes to stand by a person who is chronically ill. What does it take to love a person who goes mad, and to stand by them and to protect their legacy and to still love them? Some of the shots in the show are so heartbreaking, of showing how Charlotte fiercely defends George and declares her love for him and insists on staying with him. That's a very different kind of relationship than, say, Penelope and Colin, or even Anthony and Kate, who I think are the other strongest couple in the series so far. Each season of Bridgerton gives us 8 episodes, about an hour long, to tell a wholly contained story that tells us what its trope is, delivers on its story beats, sets up another season, and reinforces a wider world building or cinematic universe. Each season does a better or worse job of this than others. Queen Charlotte does it the best. I don't think Bridgerton is completely out of the woods yet, though. I really do think that season 3 shook the table too much. I think that by revealing Lady Whistledown's identity to everyone, we've lost an important framing device and contextual device, which, you know, added mystery and stakes to the show. We haven't lost them entirely. Again, we'll see how the show continues to handle this, but I can't help but feel that the Lady Whistledown narrative device might just be played out by the time the show gets to its end, which would be too bad, because it's fun. For me, the main risks going into the second half of season 4 are, one, is the show going to continue to get the balance of subplots right? Are we going to have subplots that continue to serve the main narrative and the world building, which I think they've done pretty well in part 1, or are they going to try and cram too many things into it and not be able to pay them off, a la season 3? We'll see. And then 2, are they going to set us up for the next couple correctly and satisfyingly? I really don't like season 3, guys. I thought it was fun. I thought it was fun, frothy TV, but I don't think it was as good, genuinely good, as the seasons that came before it. And I think that season 4 is more on par with seasons 1 and 2. But for me, like, the key core mistakes of Bridgerton were making Colin and Penelope the main couple of season 3 and revealing Lady Whistledown's identity, Penelope's, too soon. All of that has changed the dynamics and the stakes of the show so significantly that it kind of changes the momentum of the show for me. I thought, and I stand by this, that season 2 had done enough work in the side quests, in the subplots, in the characterization to set up Benedict to have been the protagonist of season 3, and I think that would have served the show better. I'm loving what they're doing with Benedict and Sophie so far in season 4. I have high hopes for the second half of season 4, and I hope they pay it off. At time of recording, I feel as though the show is setting up Eloise to be the main character of season 5. And I think that because she has experienced consistent character change throughout all of the seasons thus far. We've seen her struggle with the expectations of young women. We've seen her kick against the pricks of womanhood in this society. We've seen her struggle with female relationships in this society. I'm really liking how in season 4 there is a sense, and I think this kind of parallels Queen Charlotte, that the world is moving on without Eloise. That her best friend is married with a kid now. 2 of her sisters are married, one older and one younger. She only has one left. And I think that the subtext of season 4 has been setting up Hyacinth really well as a young lady who is, more traditionally female in this space, and is hurt that Eloise, doesn't seem to want to relate to her at all, because Eloise is so intent on kind of performing her dissatisfaction with the world. Eloise doesn't really know who she is. She doesn't really know what she wants. She only knows what she doesn't want. But she's being left behind by her other family members who are partnering off and, setting up their own families. Even her mother is, experiencing a late life romance and kind of looking to the second half of her life. And Eloise just feels stuck, but not stuck in a bad way, stuck in a way that I feel is giving her main character energy for season 5. Also, I know it's problematic. I know that Eloise's book is the worst book in the series. I know this. I think this show could have so much fun with Eloise and Sir Philip Crane. I think the Shondaland treatment of that kind of relationship, which is, a marriage, which is the marriage of convenience trope, could be so fun, particularly if, they really lean in and make Sir Philip just, a horny freak on par with Anthony. Like, if he is just a nerd in public and an absolute, maniac in the bedroom. I think that would rock Eloise's world in a really interesting and fundamental way. A girl who's decided that marriage and partnership is stifling, who kind of disdains romance. Like, for that kind of character to become, a loving stepmother, a loving partner, to get put through the mattress in the best possible way, and also to be partnered to a gentleman who has a profession. Like, Sir Phillip is a naturalist, a botanist in this world. He would probably really encourage her to have her own interests and pursuits. Like, again, for all of these reasons, I feel like Eloise is being set up to be the main character of season 5. So if the show now pulls a season 3 and gives us a totally different storyline, I think I'll be disappointed. I could see how they're setting up Francesca and Michaela's storyline too, but in my opinion, they're doing more and have laid more of a foundation with Eloise's character to make her the next main. And I think it would be a mistake if they didn't. So those are all my hot takes about Bridgerton thus far. Those are the ingredients that I think make Bridgerton work, and I think why I rank the seasons I do, and why I'm enjoying season 4 part 1 so far. I think they've returned to the original recipe. I think they've gotten the balance right of what makes Bridgerton so appealing. I have high hopes that, the second half of season 4 will deliver on it. But I am aware of the fact that apparently viewing numbers are down for Bridgerton. And I think that's for a couple of reasons. Number one, season 3 was bad and it shook the table and it deviated too much from the original recipe. And that puts, more casual fans off. It's not as fun. It doesn't hit the same emotional beats in the same way. Number 2, one of my favorite things to rant about, Netflix, baby, what are you doing? It was so stupid for Netflix to continue on this weird business model where it breaks its seasons up so significantly. Netflix kind of came to the fore with its original strategy of dumping all of its episodes at once. Its model and its appeal and its cultural language was all based around the idea of binging a new season of TV when it came out, right? For good or for ill, that's what you got when Netflix released a season of TV. But I don't know if it's because it's trying to juice its numbers or what have you, but by splitting seasons of TV up with significant breaks in between, I think it takes away from the momentum of the story. And I think this is especially true with things like romance, where, sorry to be crude, the edging is kind of the point. God, I hope my parents aren't watching this. Not to be too crude, but if a whole aspect of your genre is about desire and yearning and anticipation and, satisfying payoff, it's weird to cut things off halfway. Don't you agree? It's frustrating for us, the audience, isn't it? It really bothers me. And not to make everything about heated rivalry, but part of the genuine enjoyment and part of the reason that I think that show became the phenomenon that it was because it was a short season of TV. It was 6 episodes, but because it was released weekly, the audience was able to experience anticipation for and payoff with every single episode as it came out. Each episode stood on its own. It worked enough on its own. It had enough contained story arc and also had enough planting and cliffhangeriness to keep you watching for the next one. I think that is fundamental to romance as a viewing experience, as an audience experience. And it's deeply, deeply weird to me that Netflix has made the decisions that it has to try and have it both ways, and not in the Benedict Bridgerton sense. I think I'm funny. But to try and hold to its binge model and also keep viewership up for sustained periods. Like, guys, you gotta commit. You gotta commit. Either give us the whole season all at once, or give us the pleasure of anticipation, planting, and payoff over 2 months with weekly drops. If Netflix continues to make Bridgerton, and I hope they do, and I hope that they continue to get the balance right and fine-tune it in fun ways that allow them to explore each storyline's individual tropes in the unique world building that they've done, that they learn some lessons from other successful romance drops of late. Number one, taking too long to do a season of television, a la Stranger Things, for instance, you lose your audience. Cutting things off midway, not satisfying. When Bridgerton came out 6 years ago, it was a genuine phenomenon. It was new, it was interesting, it was aesthetic, it was fun, it was naughty, but also wholesome and satisfying. All of the things that you want a good romance to be. But if Netflix doesn't course correct from a business model perspective, they might lose what is an otherwise very committed and interested audience. They seem to have lost some people by deviating too much from the aesthetics of the show and what made it successful in the first instance. And I'm afraid that they might be, losing the audience whose tastes and viewing habits seem to be changing, broadly speaking, back to wanting more anticipation. I think if you read the critics, if you read entertainment press and media, if you just read comments online, there seems to be a real desire to go back to appointment television viewing, to have the pleasure of anticipating something and looking forward to it, while also feel the satisfaction of more regular payoff. I continue to think that between taking too long and spending too much money to do unsatisfying or sloppy seasons of TV is not going to serve any media company well. And with recent evidence, there's a lot of ways to take your audience for granted. One is to, not give the people what they want aesthetically. But another one is to kind of take advantage of their attention spans. Like, we've demonstrated now through multiple media properties that people are willing to wait week to week to enjoy a show. You're not going to lose us by stretching out releases of a show that way. But you might lose us by edging us halfway and not taking us to completion. So in conclusion, rewatch Queen Charlotte. I did the other day. Still slaps, man. And maybe see you back here for the second half of season 4. Hope it's good.